Eden's Living TV coming to you today. I have one of my favorites, my naturopathic brother from another mother, Dr. Radley Ramdhan. He is an expert in just about anything, talking about neurodivergence, post-traumatic stress, and mindset coaching. Welcome, Dr. Radley, back to Eden's Living TV. I am so happy to see you.
Hi, Susan, and thank you again for having me. It's always a pleasure being on your program. We've been through a lot of different topics, and like you said, there's a lot of different aspects to me, and I am always grateful for the opportunity to share information and knowledge of what I know. So thank you.
And I love it to the fact that you are a soldier, sir. So thank you for your service, Radley. Today, I want to learn about ruminations, Dr. Radley, because I've been letting people run like a wheel in my brain rent free for, about 11 months, and I need it to end. I need them out of my brain because it drives you crazy. It's constant. You're trying to figure out, like, what just happened? That narcissist totally abused me. And you still, even though you know what it is, you're like, what the hell just happened?
So the topics, let's talk rumination. So you're already introducing the topic here for me. So the question is, what is rumination? So I like a little bit of humor when I do things. Humor is always something that breaks the ice, but it also gets us to think a lot more and takes us, sometimes it even helps us to break out of that rumination aspect of things. So I have a picture here of a cow. As we know, rumination is a process that cows go through where they feed and they have to um, they feed and then the food stays in their stomach and then they have a secondary part of the digestion that happens later on. So these are just some random quotes I came up with just to kind of make it show the other side of rumination, where a lot of it really just has to do with the thinking aspect of it and overthinking aspect of things. So in
Hey,
simple
Radley, can I
terms,
stop you before you do this? You know what
yeah,
we call Mississippi, what we would call that? We call that chewing the cud.
it is chewing the cud,
We're
is
chewing the cud.
rumination. Yep, yep, that's exactly what rumination is from the cow's perspective. But in terms of the medical side of it and the mental health side of it, rumination is defined more as an excessive or repetitive thinking about the same event. So there are different types of rumination, and I have here at the bottom a picture of a cow again, and it says rumination is chewing on the past. So it's the same thing. The cow eats the food, and it has to re-eat and try to redigest the food later on, brings it back up and chews it. So basically, that's what chewing on the past reflects from. So four main types of rumination are brooding, reflection, intrusive, and deliberate. So brooding is more of like that passive thinking about one's mood or situation in a negative way. Reflection is more of that internal, inwards examination of one's feeling. Intrusive, it's more of that uncontrolled thoughts related to a stressful event. And deliberate rumination is more of like actively thinking about a situation to understand it from different dynamics on different sides. Another way that it's classified, it's adaptive versus maladaptive. And even within that, the adaptive versus maladaptive, you still go back to those main types where adaptive rumination could be either reflection or deliberate, or maladaptive would reflect the brooding or intrusive type of rumination. Then there's the depressive versus post-traumatic classification of rumination. So depressive would be associated with brooding and reflection, post-traumatic usually associated with intrusive and deliberate. So some of the possible causes and triggers of rumination, they could stem from various things. We've been through a stressful situation, a traumatic event, just us trying to be perfectionists, which a lot of times do stem from some type of childhood trauma or some type of neglect in the past that one recognizes a personal stress, and they try to correct situations because of that. So the perfectionism stems from something that usually happens from childhood aspects of
You know
things.
what I find in clinic is that I like this narcissist I'm trying to figure out. I realized their father was an engineer and very strict, and I'm sure they could never do anything perfect or right. and it's really affected them because they can't, if it's not perfect, you can't do it.
Yeah.
And it really bleeds into every aspect of your life when you try to control it. It's a control
Hmm.
mechanism, and you're right, it's from trauma.
Yep. And like you said, sometimes it's things that the parents do that they don't realize the impact of what it puts on to the child.
Yes.
So perfectionism is one side of it, but you also have like that low self-esteem. Sometimes people being
Mm-hmm.
put down, and it doesn't only come from parents. Sometimes it's societal aspects of things that creates that low self-esteem. But again, these are things that develop from childhood. Um, you have that upcoming stressful event. So, for example, you have a big presentation, or you have a doctor's appointment, or you have some type of event coming up. The stress of trying to plan and think sometimes creates that rumination aspect of thing going on as well. Also awaiting potential life-changing event news. So even in the medical field, you have where people would go and say, for example, do some type of test that gives you some type of life-changing diagnostic. So cancer is one of those more common things that you hear people tend to have that negative connotation to, where it's like, all right, it's a life and death situation. This is the diagnosis. This is what is going on. So sometimes just in that process of waiting for the test results from certain things can create that type of life-changing stresses. Sometimes it's just waiting on the news of a new job. So you might have been out of a job and then you're just waiting on getting the new job. And in that time of waiting, it's like, all right, am I going to get the job? Am I not going to get the job? What did I do wrong? What did I say? What could I have done better? And all of these are things that we do as part of those rumination. And then more different aspects of things could stem from like phobias and fears, anxiety, OCD, depression. These are things that can trigger rumination. These are things that can help us get stuck also in those aspects of um, mental health issues long term.
I discovered a trigger the last couple of days, actually, two triggers. Feeling out of control when someone, a neighbor, had my truck for 6 days, and I was completely out of control. I could not make him fix it. And just the helplessness of not being in control, I would pace. And my anxiety was just revving. And I've come to find out he does drugs. I'm like, you can't do that around me. You can't make me wait and wait and wait and wait because you're just driving my anxiety. And then it got to a point, Dr. Radley, where I promise you, it skyrocketed me, and I started feeling disassociated,
Mhm.
totally separate from my body, and I still just now getting in my body.
And that's one of the things that happens with it. That's one of the negative aspects of rumination, or negative effects of rumination. Sometimes you have that separation between the present and the past. Sometimes you go into your
Mm-hmm.
own PTSD. Sometimes it just aggravates different health issues. So some of the things that it could worsen from a mental health thing, it's mental health aspect of issues could be OCD, depression, anxiety, phobia, PTSD. They could actually make these things worse than it were before. So you might, for example, something happens and you're somebody that struggles with depression. It's easy for you to go down that rabbit hole and get
Mm-hmm.
stuck down that rabbit hole because
Spiral.
of
Yes,
rumination.
spiral.
Exactly. Um,
Yeah, I figured when I was triggered and I couldn't get my heart, I was tapping, I was walking, I was trying to deep breathe, I kept asking them, "Do you not understand that this drives me, that you're hurting me, literally causing me physical pain and my migraine and my brain hurts and I'm having loose bowels because my central nervous system, I didn't feel safe." How can you get people that don't know what post traumatic stress is to understand you are causing me pain and I'm suffering? And if you don't stop, I can't be around you.
mhm. That is something that has its own little challenges. Sometimes people who are not typically aware of their own self, it becomes difficult for them to be aware of their situation around you. And a lot of times people trigger things within PTSD for us.
Oh, lost you.
And
Lost you.
are you
Can't
hearing
hear
me?
you.
You hearing me now?
Lost the video. Hang on, Sam.
Are you hearing me now?
All right, there you go. We lost you for a second.
Okay. So I'm saying what I was saying is that sometimes within the PTSD aspect of it and people recognizing it, sometimes the issue is that they are not themselves self-aware. So sometimes they don't realize that things that they are doing could potentially exacerbate somebody else's situation. Sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
have the aspect of things where people themselves just don't understand PTSD. And
Mm-mm.
they think of it as more of a deeper and a more negative thing. And some people have their own dynamics of what they shape PTSD to be, and sometimes they think it. And unfortunately, people class mental health as with madness and craziness and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're
So they
crazy.
expect to see those types of response. So if they see somebody that is more of the calmer, um, figure in front of them. They don't see where there could have been that link to PTSD and stuff like that. So sometimes just them not having awareness of certain things or
Mhm.
understanding PTSD can create that separation from them being able to understand why you're being triggered about it. Sometimes it's just us having to take the opportunity to educate people about it, and sometimes it's
It's
a way.
hard. It's hard. They don't understand. I begged this guy, I said, look, I cannot wait. It's a control issue of me not having a ride in what I do for a living. I have to have transportation. And my life had other people expecting me to be there. He cost me like a contract. He
Mhm.
couldn't get the truck done, and I literally lost a contract, business. And he didn't care. It
Yeah.
didn't even register that his actions of doing drugs and not able to stay on task affected not only me, but affected people around me. And he still hasn't gotten it.
Yeah.
Still
And
hasn't gotten
sometimes it's a difficult thing to deal with, and sometimes we have to focus because PTSD is not affecting him, right? He's not
it. No,
seeing it that way.
he's on
So
drugs. He's in his
we
own
have,
world. Huh.
when we're going through our experiences, we have to learn to find ways to control things, and we have to find ways. And I mean, yes, it's putting more pressure on ourselves, but we could only control what we could control. And the more things we could do to sort of help protect ourselves in those situations is what would make the biggest difference for us. Because again, it goes back to them not understanding the situation. And when they don't
Right.
understand, they may not have a care for it. So we can't always say, let's leave the blame on them or say that what they're doing is necessarily right. It's not a
Yeah.
matter of right or wrong. It's a matter of us trying to take control of our conditions, our
It's
situation.
traumatizing. He
Yeah.
was re traumatizing me every second, and he intentionally made me wait. I mean, I'm telling you, 45 minutes to get my truck. Every second, I knew he was just in there. I knew he's like, it's a form of control. I'm going to
Yeah.
control her.
And that's where we have to know how do we manage our triggers? How do we create boundaries around things that can help us to protect ourselves from going through that overreaction or overthinking process of the situation. So again, it comes back down to us trying to find ways to help control what we could control and put
We'll
things into
protect
place.
ourselves. You have
Yeah,
to
and to
protect
put
my
things into our
safety.
space to help with those things. Yep.
Yeah. It is a lot of education. I've lost a lot of friends that don't understand it. Like, oh, you're mentally ill. No, I'm traumatized. I was in a 5-car pilot, spent 25 years of my life addicted in bed alone. That's trauma. It's
Mhm.
trauma.
Yep.
And it's just so misunderstood in society. Oh, he's got mental health issues or she's crazy. No, they've never had a therapist like yourself that can process it, say, look, adverse childhood events. Let's look at it, diagnose it, find your triggers, get you coping mechanisms, get you aware and connected to your body. As you said, most people are not even aware what they're doing to other people.
Exactly.
Not even aware.
Yeah. And that's something that we can't control. The best we could do is, as the saying go, plant the seed or take a hammer and try to, a chisel and hammer and try to chip away at the wall as opposed to trying to take a sledgehammer to break that wall down. Um, so
I'm a
it takes
sledgehammer
time.
kind of girl.
It's one of those things that has its process with it, but it's sometimes we have to focus on controlling what we could control in given situations, like I said, so that we could help protect ourselves and create that safe space for ourselves. It
You want
is
to know the,
selfish in doing it, but at the same time, it's we need to protect ourselves from what
yes,
other people don't understand about us. And that's
yes.
where once we start getting control of those things, it becomes easier and easier for us to be able to expose to certain things, to be able to have
Hmm.
that control response versus a reaction to different situations and triggers.
Oh, that good old response versus react. That was a lesson I had to learn in my journey. I
Yeah,
was a reactive little fool. Oh,
yeah,
they got my goat. You ever heard that Mississippi saying, they got my goat? When you
uh-huh,
get mad and someone gets you mad, they make you angry. Well, they didn't make you angry. They got your goat. You allowed
yeah,
them to make you
yeah,
angry.
exactly.
Yeah. They didn't do anything to you. You allowed, that's another
So
lesson I had
do
to
it.
learn.
Yeah.
No one hurts me. I allow them to hurt
Hmm.
me.
Exactly.
That was a hard one, taking
Yeah.
accountability.
And it becomes a challenge when we have struggle with PTSD because sometimes we could get caught up with dealing with one aspect of things and not realize where other things are creating problems for us.
Hmm.
And like I said, the more self-aware we are, the easier it becomes to identify certain things and then to deal with it. Because if we don't know what the problem is or where it's stemming from, we can't really fix it.
Yeah.
So the more internal work we do, it's the bigger of the impact that we can get on our overall health.
And I think it's really important. I had someone I went to for mindset and to help my spine repair, and just situations, just not even want to share publicly. But this mindset coach that I was working on just blocked me, stopped communicating with me in the worst part of my life. You know what? That did more damage where I don't even trust anyone now. And
Hmm.
I don't even think they realize the damage. So if y'all are looking for practitioners, please make sure, first of all, they're not a narcissist and they'll just cut you off if it gets uncomfortable, because these people will not look back. And it did a lot of damage to me. And I just have no respect for this professional now, because
Hmm.
it's all about their growth and their money. And if you don't give her $6,000, $12,000, they just cut you.
Yeah.
We were friends for 4 years. What do you think about a professional doing that that calls herself a mindset coach? They can't communicate, Radley.
I mean, I think it's unprofessional, but what I tell my patients, it's you're gonna throughout your healing journey, you're gonna meet all type of people. And that is where you
Predators.
have control of, right? You have control of who you go to, when you go to, how you go to them, and how you're investing in your own health when it comes to those things. And that's where you understand the boundaries of how much are you willing to give in to something before you
Yes.
see your return. And then on the flip side of it, being a patient, you have to understand that not everybody fits you. There might be one person that that style of personality really works for, and they might be able to get the help that they need from that person. Some
Person tried to
people
control me.
may
It was all
need
about
something
control.
completely different. So, as a patient, and it goes back again to that self-awareness, if you're in a situation where you feel like you're not benefiting, or like you said, you're losing that control, then how much of it is it really benefiting you? And then once you're able to identify that, then you have the chance to say, listen, I don't think I could continue with this specific style or this
Hmm.
specific way. There are tons of different healthcare providers that are out there to help with different types of mental health issues, and it's all about finding the right one. Sometimes
That's it.
we might need to get up to 10 or 20 people before we hit the right one, right? But
Right.
we can't give up because we had a bad experience with one. Not everybody has the same dynamics, not everybody has the same experiences. So a lot of times it is taking that time to find what
Hmm.
works for you and the person that works for you and the style that works for you. And sometimes even within the same person that works for you, sometimes it's different styles that has to work for different traumatic event that we've been through.
Hmm.
One thing it might be easy to talk about, another one you might need writing, another one you might
Hmm.
need some type of things like EMDR or EFT or some different type of group therapy that might be more effective for that specific event that you want to work on. So a lot of it is a lot of different dynamics happens with it. It's yes, we could get help, but sometimes it takes more time. And the more we understand that, it's the better we would be able to get that help that we need. And we
Hmm.
can't just give up because we went to two bad ones, three bad ones, four bad ones, five bad ones. The sixth one might just be the lucky one that helps you make the
Pick it.
significant breakthrough. And you should never look at it as these people never helped you because they've made you more aware of something. And sometimes, even with those narcissistic personalities, they would help you understand that, okay, well, maybe something within that personality is what is clashing with me. So, why am I seeking out? Why am I getting that
Just
repetitive
like my
cycle
mother. They were just
of,
like my mother, controlling, all about money, all about that image, all about this.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I attracted my mother and a therapist.
And that is what that would help you to figure out, like, okay, this is maybe the situation that I need to focus on. Because sometimes we reach out and we're like, we want help with problem X, right? But really and truly, deep down, problem D is the one that is the biggest thing that we need to deal with. And sometimes when we go to these different therapists, they push buttons so much that it helps you pop option D up or event D up, and then you don't realize, like, okay, this is why. But then you put that wall up and say, oh, this is coming up and this is why I feel this way. Maybe I should just step away. Yes, it might be the
Hmm.
right thing to step away, but you have to also take the lesson that is coming out of it. So I don't like to ever say that there's a bad therapist or there's a bad doctor. Something about them are going to help you in some ways.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, people have their own ways, their own styles and stuff like that, but something within those experience, why you decide that you needed to put that wall back up. Why did you need to feel that negative connection with that person? It's
It
creating
made me
something
sick.
from you.
Her cutting me off, not even communicating with me, it physically has made me sick for 11 months.
Mhm.
We were friends, and because I didn't pay 6 grand fast enough in other situations, and I saw that person was not a healer, but
Mhm.
more of a, here I'm a corporation, want a multi-million-dollar, whatever. I don't work
Yeah.
with those type people. They are not my type people. I don't even charge a lot of times for therapy and working with a lot of sex trafficked girls. My whole mission in life is not to be a multimillionaire. I want people to find themselves, heal themselves, and love themselves and find their God.
Yeah.
That's my whole mission, is to hold space and give you a safe space without judgment. Radley, safe places are hard to find.
Mhm. It is definitely something that is a challenge sometimes, and we have to try to create that when we could, when patients come to us, when we're working with friends, family, sometimes we have to find that way to create safe spaces for them. We also have to learn to create safe spaces for ourselves too, so that in that way, the more practice we have with doing it for ourselves, it becomes easier to do it when it reflects on somebody else as well.
Right.
So coming back to the negative effects of rumination,
Talk
um,
about ruminating. I've been
yeah,
ruminating for
it is a
11 months.
very good example of where rumination plays that part. It brings up things that has affected us. So sometimes it affects or it encourages that negative mood. It increased risk of harmful behaviors. It could affect sleep. It also develops like comorbidities, so things like high blood pressure, um, heart disease, different types of other health conditions that are typically seen as comorbidities with mental health, even things like diabetes and stuff like that. Some of those
Mhm.
things can stem from mental illness. Not saying that every time it does, but sometimes there is that connection with that extra stress that we put ourselves through because of the rumination increases blood pressure, increases sugar, etc., increases inflammation within our body, and then they
Inflammation.
present in so many different ways for us. So it is important to understand that sometimes there is that negative effects of rumination. So I wanted to highlight here a study on rumination and PTSD, and this is just one study, but there are also several other studies that sort of reflects the same information about rumination and PTSD. So I just put the little clip out of it, or the little quote from it. 6 months later, it was observed that the most significant predictor of post-traumatic symptoms was intrusive rumination, whereas deliberate rumination was the most significant predictor of post-traumatic growth, right? So that's basically showing where the intrusive rumination helps to lead more towards PTSD, versus the deliberate rumination helps to create that post-traumatic growth. And the difference really is the intrusive one is going down that negative rabbit hole again of keep dwelling on certain things. Deliberate rumination, it's more of where, all right, I'm doing it in a more constructive way. I'm actually, and this is where we have to understand sometimes rumination may not be a negative thing. There might be positive aspects to it, but a part of it has to do with how much of it are we controlling and where are we going with the rumination. So deliberate rumination would be more of something where that it has that structure to it. Well, like I'm thinking about whatever the trauma was, but I'm thinking about it in a more way of trying to become aware of that aspect of the trauma. I'm trying to become more aware of what does that trauma create within me? What are the triggers associated with? What are the emotional responses? What are the mental responses? What are the psychological, physiological responses? And through that way, it's what could help you to deal with the post-traumatic growth aspect of it. So once you're able to identify all of those things, then it helps us to figure out ways to deal with certain things. So rumination and post-traumatic growth, a lot of times the deliberate rumination is what would help us to have more positive outcomes for post-traumatic growth. Rumination and depression. So this is another from studies that says depression has shown a stronger relationship with brooding rumination. And that's where we compare in one current situation to an idealized alternative versus reflective rumination, which is more of engaging in a cognitive problem solving through internal reflection. So again, this is two different types of rumination, brooding rumination versus reflective rumination. So depression, you see where we go through those process of like trying to compare our situation to another person's situation. And we minimize the effects of our situation or we maximize the negative look on our situation, and that sort of creates that extra depression because now it's like, all right, well, things are the worst possible way that it could be, and that's what we dwell on when we ruminate by doing that brooding rumination type. Versus if we flip it and we do it again more of that reflective type, where it's like, okay, what is causing me to be depressed? What are the situations that I went through that is causing me to depress? And figuring out, okay, these are the situations going back again even to like those triggers and stuff like that, identifying those triggers, identifying those emotional responses that comes around it, and then now flipping it and trying to engage in, okay, now that we've identified a problem, what could be possible solutions to dealing with them? So that is what we would do it more in terms of like that reflective rumination. We actively we are putting the effort into doing it and saying we're reflecting on the situation, but we also want something positive out of it. So we're going into that rumination for a positive outcome versus a negative outcome.
Hey, Radley, when you go into that depressive side, I know for myself, it's more of an anger at myself because I can't figure out what happened and then they're not giving me the ability to communicate. So I'm just self-reflecting it all back to myself. And then I get so overwhelmed and stuck feeling hopeless. I'm just like, I'm depressed. It's like a negative energy tie sucking me to this person. And it's like a shadow over me.
Yeah.
Like a black hole, and you don't know how to get out, but you know where you're in a hole.
Yeah. And you are right about that. Emotion comes in combination forms. Like you mentioned, starts off with the idea of being depressed. Then you talked about anger stemming from it, and then you're talking about getting stuck in those depressive settings. A lot of times there is that combination aspect of it, and it is important for us to understand that. So when they pop up, we know how to deal with it. And again, this is where if we do it in a more of that constructive rumination style, so example, that reflective or deliberate rumination style, then we could go into it and take out what is negative from it and figure out, create that problem solving aspects of things. So it is important to understand that emotions a lot of times come combined. And sometimes one presents itself more because we are trying to find a suppressive way for the primary emotion. So when we suppress the primary emotion, what pops up is a secondary emotion. So sometimes that secondary emotion really is the depression, but it's stemming from the anger. And because
Anger,
we become
not feeling
overwhelmed by,
heard. Yeah,
yeah,
not
because we
feeling heard,
become
not feeling seen, not
overwhelmed.
feeling loved.
Exactly. When we become overwhelmed by those types of reactions, then we suppress the anger because society tells us anger is bad, right? So we need to suppress it. We need to try to push forward. We need to try to get through the situation. So we suppress it as opposed to dealing with it. And then that pops up in the secondary form of now grief or overthinking or depression, as the case might be. So it is, like I said, it is important to understand the nature of our emotions. What is that? I like using the analogy of the iceberg, right? What caused the Titanic to to sink wasn't the part of the iceberg that they saw, it's the part that was under the water. And
Hmm.
that's the part that hit the Titanic first, right? And that is what created the hole. That is what created the problem. So a lot of times it's the things that are below the surface that we don't take time to understand, we don't take time to reflect on, that is really digging in and causing us more harm than good. And it is what is sinking our own personal Titanic, basically. So,
But what's beautiful is that you have the solution to break this cycle. I love this. So how in the heck can I break it?
so part of breaking the cycle of rumination is understanding rumination, right? So we talked about the four aspects of rumination, the two that are negative and the two that have that positive sides to it. So once we're able to identify our triggers using some of these same rumination cycles in terms of the reflective and the deliberate, then we could do things to avoid triggers, right? Ideally, we shouldn't want to live at points where we have to avoid our triggers, but we need to get ourselves into safe spaces. So
Yeah.
sometimes when our triggers are too much or it is overwhelming, we need to find ways to avoid triggers, right? As much as we could so that we could help ourselves to find adaptive ways to go from fight and flight to be in more of that calmer, controlled situation, right? So that's why I have avoiding triggers as one aspect of it. It's not the end all be all where you have to avoid all triggers, right? Because there are sometimes you might be in places or situations where you cannot avoid the triggers. And ideally, we want to get comfortable to a point where avoiding triggers is not the ideal situation. We should be comfortable
Right.
being around our triggers, but not being triggered. So that is one
And
way is,
learning coping. You teach coping mechanisms when you get triggered. That's what I love about you is you
yeah.
teach people how to deal with this.
And that's part of what we need to do when we are triggered. If we if we understand when we understand triggers, we have to understand how does triggering present for us, right? What are the emotional responses? What are the physiological, psychological responses that we see? Do we notice tightening of muscles? Do we notice a headache? Do we notice sweaty palms? Do we notice tension in our shoulders? These are things that
Short
happen
breathing, panting.
before sometimes the emotional response comes in. So if we're able to
Yep.
identify some of these secondary or these primary responses before the secondary responses happen, then we could create situations where we could break that cycle of the triggers happening, right? Avoiding them is one, but as you said, coping mechanism is another aspect of it. Doing deep breathing exercises, doing something that
Hmm.
distracts you from it in that given moment, take your mind off of it, not necessarily moving away from the situation, but taking some type of simple thing that you could do within your own time. Sometimes it's just writing on a piece of paper. Sometimes it's taking a deep breath. Sometimes it's taking a deep breath intentionally where I feel tension in my shoulders. I take an intentional deep breath, breathing into my shoulders, allowing it to
A
relax.
tap.
Doing
A
things like
lot of
tapping.
tapping.
These are
A lot of
simple
tapping.
coping mechanisms that we could have within our given situations to help break that cycles of the trigger. Being in nature is a way of breaking the cycles with
Yeah.
rumination. When we're out in nature, we have that opportunity to just sort of connect with nature. And yes, sometimes we do go through rumination even when we're in nature, but something about the calming effect of it does help us to kind of break away. And a lot of it is reducing the stress around things. So in nature, just having those natural responses from being in a forest, being by the beach, being by the water, wherever is that nature and that calming connection for you is what you want to try to get.
A good
Exercise,
grounding
yeah.
and
And grounding is a big
aromatherapy.
part of being
Yeah.
in nature. We want to try to find that grounding aspect of when we're in nature. We want to really connect with our surroundings in those given times. Exercise is also something that really helps us to break rumination. If we go for a run, if we go for a long walk, sometimes those things help us to get out of it. If we go to the gym and we're lifting weights or we use in boxing or some type of sport, sometimes those things help us to break the cycle of rumination. So rather than dwelling on the situation of what is going on and getting stuck in it, sometimes switching that becomes a way to break the cycle. And that leads into my next point of distraction, switching thought process. So these are things that you could use as distraction, but distraction can also mean something as simple. And this is not even using tap-in from the formal tap-in in terms of like emotional freedom techniques tap-in.
Mhm.
Sometimes a simple thing like just tapping your finger or your hand on your feet or on your leg, right? And just alternating which side you're
Yep.
tapping. It forces you to bring awareness to those specific movements. And that helps you to break away from that rumination or that thought process of going down the rabbit hole. Um, so it's a way to kind of switch your thought process of something. Distraction could be like I'm writing, so I take a pen and a piece of paper and write something down. I
Hmm.
take my phone and I go and I type in something on it. A distraction could be something like watching a funny video, or sometimes listening to like a motivational talk on YouTube or listening to a podcast or whatever the situation is, but something to distract you and break you away from that situation.
Hey, Radley,
Gratitude.
you know what I've started carrying in my pocket when I go out and I know I'm really struggling with my post-traumatic stress? I keep essential oils like Gentle Baby and I do reverse nostril breathing.
Hmm.
And this really gets me between the aromatherapy and you're getting oxygen nutrients too. This kind of cleanses my receptors in my brain. So I carry essential oils
Hmm.
like lavender and trauma life and harmony. These are things that really calm me down.
Yeah, and sometimes
I
that
don't
is
write anything
finding
about it.
things like that that work for you. Aromatherapy plays a big part in it because the different smells would create different responses. And just sometimes just increasing circulation to the brain could help us
Hmm.
help us focus on something more or help us become more relaxed, as the case might be. So yes, even using things like essential oils would be something that can be beneficial to helping you break the cycle of rumination. Also, giving gratitude, being thankful for where we are, being thankful for certain situations could help us really break from rumination. Because once we start giving gratitude, once we're being thankful, it puts a positive spin on things. Sometimes, even for the worst experiences that we have, the way that we look at it is what makes the impact for us. If the worst possible thing that happens to you today, you'd say like, okay, well, it's a growing experience versus saying that it's the worst possible thing that happened to me. Just the mindset of what we put around those situations would help us change from creating that negative response around the situation and prevent that rumination aspect of it. So when we look at it more positive, we're more likely to give gratitude for it. So sometimes being thankful for the experiences that we have. Say I'm thankful for the growing experience that I had today, as opposed to
Hmm.
saying, oh, I'm thankful because today is the worst day of my life, right? It doesn't really matter saying it that way. But if you say that today was probably one of the days that I've grown the most from my experience, that changes your perception of what
Yeah.
that day entailed. Even though it could have been some of the worst experiences that you have, just that mindset of changing it and giving gratitude
Hmm.
for it in a more positive way is what would help you break away from that rumination. Self-empowerment, self-development, increase in self-esteem are all things that helps with that. The more that we do things to develop ourselves, help ourselves. And again, it goes back even to listening to music, listening to
Hmm.
YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, doing self-development courses. They're all things that could help us to become better. The more
I
self-awareness.
dance. I dance and sing is how I've started dancing and posting online. And I get more like results and people responding to my dancing, and I do my medical. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so easy to entertain. But yeah, brain balance and pen to paper too, and
Yeah,
bird singing. I
yeah.
listen to bird singing to balance my brain. But movement is key when you have post-traumatic
Movement.
stress.
Yeah.
Balance those hemispheres of your brain.
Yeah. And you touched on a good point where you talked about sharing videos with you dancing and seeing the positive responses from people. And a lot of times we don't realize the impact of little things that we do. And when we
Hmm.
start becoming more aware of them, like you said, you post a video of you dancing and then you get responses, positive responses, right?
Positive, yes, positive. Like, girl, we
It's
didn't know you could move like
you
that.
yourself sometimes that and it's you yourself sometimes have that fear associated with what if I get negative responses? What if I do this? What and that is what holds us back often. We live in that dynamics of fear and
Fear.
what other
You're
people
living in
might say.
fear.
And then we do it and it's like, oh well, look how much positive response I'm getting. Not saying that there might not be people that comes up with negative responses, but we do get positive responses also things that we do and sometimes that is what would help us to increase our self-esteem, that
And it helps you
self-development,
heal.
self-empowerment and the healing aspect of it. And
Yes.
even when you get those negative responses, is how do you take it? Do I take it as something that shuts me off from doing it, or if they make a negative response, then maybe I'm going to try something different, do something different
Right.
to see if I can improve myself. And I'm not improving myself because of them. I'm improving myself for me. And that's what we have to see it as. Self-empowerment,
Yep.
self-development, self-esteem. It shouldn't be because I'm trying to impress somebody else. It should be
No, I
I'm doing
dance for
this
me.
for me. And that's
Yeah, I
where
dance for me.
when you have that genuine connection to it, you would see people responding very differently to you. And you would
Hmm.
start getting more of that positive feedback and responses from people because of those aspects of things.
Well,
Meditation.
anytime you're authentic, Dr. Radley, people gravitate towards, even if you suck at something, if you're authentic, going, hey, I'm trying, at least I'm
Yep.
trying.
And
People
people
navigate like, well,
appreciate
she
that.
can try, I can
People
try.
connect to those things because we all find that within ourselves. Sometimes we feel like, all right, I'm not good enough to do this, I'm not good enough to do
Right.
that. And then you start doing it, and it's like, okay, well, it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to not be perfect in things because it helps and it shows us that when we post things,
Yes.
right? That yes, we made a mistake, but people still value it. People value it for what it is. And it helps people to make that connection of we're all human, right? It
Yes.
is human nature to make mistakes, right? We're not gods, we're not perfect in any way. But when we remember those things, it helps us to boost that confidence. It helps us to
Yes.
boost that self-esteem. And when we help ourselves through that way, we're also given an opportunity to help somebody else. And sometimes your dance or video that somebody else shares about something might be impactful for somebody else that is watching it. And that might be the one thing that makes their day. That might be the one thing that makes the difference for them. And when we do those things and we build those self-empowerment, self-development, self-esteem aspects of things, it is helping us too, but it also has potential to create that ripple effect to help others around us.
Yes.
Well,
I have a whole little group of brain injured people that literally can't dance and used to be ballerinas. And people don't know that I lost the ability to literally walk, and my balance sometimes is off. I've almost fallen dancing. And my brain injured people recognize that I'm struggling, and they're like, girl, you can do it. And then they are like, well, she can do it sick and hurt and dizzy. I can too. So it's a ripple effect
yeah,
of being authentic, sharing your struggle. People a lot of times want to put a mask on that they're perfect in their life, and that you're doing a disservice to yourself and society when you wear masks.
exactly,
You do. You
exactly.
do.
And another aspect of it is the meditation and the self-awareness. The more we do meditation is the more self-aware we become. When I talk about meditation, I don't only talk about sitting in a quiet space with eyes closed, legs folded, and meditating in that way. There are different styles of meditation. Meditation could come in the form of going for a long walk. Meditation could come in
Hmm.
the form of listening to music while you run. Big part of meditation and what meditation should be seen as is creating that self-awareness aspect of it, being able to truly connect to yourself and everything else that is going on. So it is important to understand that part of meditation is self-awareness, and whatever way that we allow that self-awareness to come in is meditation. So don't just say meditation and say, oh, I need to sit in a quiet space to do it. I have had times where my form of meditation was running on the beach with my headphones in, listening to music. Sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
going for a walk. Sometimes it's sitting in a quiet space and just zoning out. Sometimes it's me sitting in a space, not moving, but playing music loud. So there are different settings, there are different ways to do it. Don't let specific definitions of meditation prevent you from doing it. Again, look at it more of how am I connecting with myself? How am I connecting with the surroundings around me as what meditation is, so that you're not limiting yourself to say, oh, I have to sit in a quiet space in order to become self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
Another side of it, it's journaling and writing. Sometimes writing helps us to put things into words, put things into something that we could see. And when we do that, it helps us also with that self-awareness aspect. But sometimes when our mind is running on something, just taking pen to paper, put it down, fingers to keyboard and typing it in. It helps us to break the cycle of rumination. And you could pick writing to be whatever form you like. I like writing in the form of poetry. I have never liked journaling. I don't
Oh,
like
Radley,
writing
I didn't know you
dear
write
journal. I
poetry.
I am this way, I am that way, or this was my day. I never liked that style of writing. Not to say that I haven't done it. I have done it for school and stuff like that, but it was never something that I was drawn towards. I like writing in poetry because it gives me an opportunity to write in an abstract way that I could understand, that others may not understand, and it's left up to interpretation. So sometimes for people who don't want people to really read and see exactly what is
Right.
going on, this is a way for you to really use writing and put it in a way that you understand it, but it's not something that anybody could just pick up and say, oh, I know exactly what is going on, because you don't want to talk about a given situation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there are different styles of writing, different styles of journaling. It's finding something that you're comfortable with. We talked about listening to music and stuff like that. These are expressive ways to get things out. So once we start going into those rumination thoughts, putting that pen to paper, writing things down, finding an avenue to channel it out helps to break the cycle of rumination, because now we're not stuck in our head saying this is what is
Mm-hmm.
going on and repeating that. Now that it's out, now that it's in a controlled setting and a visual setting, it becomes easier. Sometimes painting, art, drawing, coloring, all of those things are abstract ways to get things out that could create that breaking of the cycle of rumination.
Art
Cognitive.
therapy is amazing. I use
Mhm.
art therapy in ITR, instinctual trauma response. Art therapy is key to in writing, pen to paper. I've always taught if you really are having trouble with ruminating, racing thoughts, process it, get it out of the body, put it to paper, pen to paper, and that brain balances.
And sometimes it's not trying to make sense of when you're writing either, because sometimes when we say, all right, I want to write what I'm ruminating on, it creates the stress because now I want to define everything. I want to
Yes.
lay everything. I want it to make sense. Sometimes we don't have to make it make sense. Just let it flow for what it is. Because a lot of times when we're ruminating, that is what happens. We go through these process back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it's not organized. And that's what keeps us dwelling on the
Mm-hmm.
rumination aspect of things. So if that's how it's coming out and you put it on pen to paper or you're typing it in, then let it come out that way. Don't make it make sense in that given time. Just let it come out. And then over time, you could take time to process it for what it is, make sense of it then. And I find that when I do that with patients, their response a lot of times is like, this is more helpful than saying, oh, I need to write it in a structured way, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. Because the added stress of trying sometimes to put structure to
Yeah.
it increases the rumination. Because now I'm like, what was I thinking about again? Oh, yes, this. And then you start, and then it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Let me go back to this, and then let me try to connect point A to point B by going in a straight line.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't think that way. We don't always think in a straight line. Sometimes it's a roller coaster of thoughts that comes. So however it comes, the idea is just to get it out in that way. Don't make it make sense in the given moment, and then you could take time afterwards to process it.
It's
So that,
disorganized thoughts. Do you not find that the brain, I thought literally I was getting demented or something was neurologically really wrong. And I had to learn that the brain becomes inflamed when you have
yep.
post-traumatic stress, when you have trauma. I used to call a doctor friend of mine, Dr. Jimbo, little shout out to you, Dr. Jim Bob. I said Bo, it was Bob. And he was a chiropractor. And I would call him literally crying, going, Jim Bob, I think I'm losing my mind. My brain, it feels like it's on fire. And he laughed. And I went, what's so funny? He said, sweetheart, it literally is. Your brain's burning up with inflammation. And that's why I said, I would walk around just holding my head crying and shaking and going, what is wrong with me? I thought I was losing my mind. I didn't know it was trauma. I didn't remember the attack that happened for 3 months, Dr. Radley, but my body did. My subconscious did, but I didn't. My
Yep.
little mind compartmentalized and put it way back on here until something triggered it. And then I was like, wow, what happened? It was assault. I was assaulted.
Yeah.
I couldn't even remember it.
And that's something that we need to work on as individuals too, that self-awareness, understanding thing. And then also understanding that aspect, what you touched on, that you didn't realize the impact of the event that happened 3 months ago. And a lot of times it's because we suppress things. We put it down, we bury it in, and then we try to move on without processing it. And things come up in different ways, different times. And sometimes it's an opportunity for us to deal with it in that given situation. Sometimes it's finding simple coping mechanisms within those given situations to just not suppress it, but get it out, but keep it in a controlled setting, or to minimize that negative response of it. So it is important, again, like some of these same things that we talked about, distraction techniques, gratitude, meditation, journaling, music,
Grounding.
grounding, all of these things are ways that you could just get it under control in that given situation. And then once you get to that safe space, then you could really start moving more and more into it. But yes, it is important that we understand that sometimes things happen like that, where we don't realize the impact of something that has happened to us. And a lot of times that could come from things like us comparing the impact of that event to something bigger. And then we're like, oh, well, this is something bigger. That's something small, very minimal. That's not going to affect me. And we do that. And that's how we suppress it. Sometimes we just forcefully suppress it because we need to get going. We need to keep doing something.
Yeah.
We need to get another job done. We
To
need to get
push
this
through.
done.
Yeah,
We
push
need to
through.
push through.
You
And
can't push through. You got to surrender with this. And anybody
yeah,
that's ever had childhood sexual trauma, I can tell you from experience, I'm 57 years old, and because I'm just now starting to process that, that is what has kept me in a rut my whole life, because I didn't ever process it. My mama just swept it down the rug and we didn't talk about it anymore.
yeah,
Well, you can't do that and be productive in society, because you're going to have a gaping hole wound and you're going to bleed all over people that didn't cut you.
exactly. And it's also a weight that you carry around that just holds you back. The heavier the weight of the burden, it's the more
It's a
slower we would be
chain.
able to move. Exactly.
It's
So,
literally a chain that binds you.
yep. There are a lot of different analogies that we could use for the chain, the heavy weight, the invisible backpack, the cover on the pot that creates the
Like cows
extra
could.
pressure. Yeah. So there's a
I
lot of
like that
different
cows
ways.
could.
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways that we could think of it, but the important thing is understanding that there is impact that happens to us from every event that we go through, be it a positive event or a negative event. It all helps to shape some aspects of
You
our
are.
lives. Yeah.
And
So,
also, I want to point out there's no big or small trauma. Trauma's trauma, and you don't ever need to compare your trauma. Like Radley has trauma, and I have trauma. Mine's not worse. His isn't worse. Trauma is trauma. Don't play.
yep.
I can't stand these people when I decide to open up my life and share a very raw, painful experience. And then, like, No, mine's worse.
Yeah,
I'm like, wow, you just diminished and didn't even hear what I shared and didn't acknowledge what I shared and then try to trump me. I don't
yeah,
hang around people like that. I do not.
yeah.
There's
And that is
no
something a lot of
empathy.
people struggle with, comparing traumas. And that is something that keeps us stuck in the cycle of PTSD, because now it's like, all right, I'm comparing, and you have both sides of it. I'm comparing my trauma to yours and
Mhm,
minimizing my trauma. I'm comparing my trauma to yours and minimizing your trauma. But like you said, trauma shouldn't be considered big or small.
mm-mm,
Trauma happens because of our perception in that given situation. So when something
mhm,
happens to us, it is how we perceive it. It has nothing to do with how other people perceive it. So when we register that perception of it,
mhm.
of that given situation, up to that point in our life, that could have been the worst possible thing that has happened.
Right.
Flip side of it, other people, yes, they may have seemed to have been through something worse than you, but that doesn't minimize the impact of the trauma.
Mm-mm,
Your trauma impact might be the same as mine, because at that point it's the worst possible trauma. And then you have other dynamics of it. It's like the resiliency aspect of it. What other type of things have you been doing? What other risk factors around PTSD are there
mhm,
that is creating the impact for you? So it is a multifold, multidimensional thing that you have to look at when it comes to it. But again, it boils back down to the perception that you had associated with that specific event in that given time is what makes the difference. It shouldn't be me comparing what happens to me to comparing it to
mhm.
somebody else, even if it's the same exact incident,
Right.
because our perception will always be based off of our experiences throughout our life up until that point. So that is something that we have to try to understand when it comes to that, because that is what would make the difference for us to really say, yes, that is traumatic, and I accept it, that
Yeah.
it is a trauma, and I need to deal with it. And if we don't understand that simple connection to it, then a lot of times it becomes easy for us to say, nah, that's small, just suppress it, just leave it, just push through it, just whatever. And then later down, when it pops up, it creates a bigger problem. And I like using analogies. So I like using the analogy of a spring. You suppress the spring, you compress it down. There's only so much you could compress that spring before you need to release it. There's only so much you could hold that spring into place before you get tired and have to release it. And the more you compress a spring, if you compress a spring to maximum compression, that would give the biggest response from it. So it's the same thing like when we suppress our stresses. When it comes out, it all depends on how much suppression we've done to it and how much
Mhm.
other things are going on around it that might create the reaction as opposed to a response in the given situation.
And you're talking about reactions. Isn't it crazy how people in families, and I've had to learn this because I'm the baby, my brothers and sisters' perception of my life and my wreck and my recovery, they have no clue
Mhm.
at all. They weren't here, didn't help me. In their perception, when I was coming out with my story publicly, it really upset me. My brother's like, your recollection is not what happened. I'm like, excuse me, I lived this, the pain, the addiction, the isolation. And I was like, you know what? Well, their perception could be their perception because I know what happens.
Mhm.
Gaslighting is the ultimate form of gaslighting.
Yeah,
When you listen to other people's perception of your situation and you listen to them rather than yourself.
yeah. And
You
that's why
have
it is
to
important
know,
to validate your
yes.
experience, because again, it's your experience, it's not their experience. 10
And
people
you don't
could
need
sit
other
in a
people
room,
to
and
validate
everybody
that.
that looks at it from, you're all looking at it from a different angle. You're not seeing it from the same space on the same time.
Mm-mm.
So it's the same way that our perception has its differences, and we have to accept that fact about it, that perception is different for everybody, and we have to validate our perception. We don't need validation of somebody else's validating our perception, and we
You don't need
should be
anybody to
doing it.
validate your pain.
Yeah.
You don't need anybody to validate my pain or my struggle. I know exactly what I did.
Yeah.
I'd like to do another podcast on perceptions.
We could
That would be a
definitely,
really
yeah,
good podcast.
Yeah,
Those
that
we can title it "Rose-Colored Glasses: The Perceptions of Post-Traumatic Stress and the Branches in Which You Can Heal." Plug your book. While we're thinking about it, I want to plug your book real quick for my audience halfway through. If you like Dr. Radley's style, which how could you not? If you have problems with rumination, if you need someone you can just trust, if you need a brother in arms, Radley's there. Radley, tell us about your book real quick, and we'll get back to the presentation. But you just kind of came out with the Healing Branches about what, 2 years ago? Or has it been three?
I think it's been 3 years. It's right
It
after
flies when
COVID.
you're having
Yeah,
fun.
it's been some time. Um, but my book is called Trauma to PTSD: Root Causes to Healing Branches. Right now, I only have it available as an ebook on Amazon. You could go to the website traumatoptsd.com, and they would have a link on there to go to the link on
Download it.
Amazon. Or you could go on Amazon and just search for trauma to PTSD root causes to healing branches. Or you just type in Dr. Radley Ramdhan and it should pop up on there as well. But yeah, that's
I loved your
where my
book. I
book
love
is
the cover
available
of
right
it.
now.
Everything you did was fabulous. I was like, oh my gosh, this cover. And I saw the subliminals immediately. I was
Thank
like,
you.
oh, he put thought into this.
Yeah. And it was a work by myself and others as well. Part of the
Your
design of
comrade
the
in
cover
arms.
was one of my sergeants in the army, and I always give him thanks for that because we sat together virtually. I shouldn't say we sat together. We sat together virtually because he's in New York and I'm in Trinidad, and we've shared our ideas. And I told him that I want him to design my book cover, and he came up with his ideas. I came up with my ideas, and he designed it, and he helped me to help make those connections as well. Like we shared ideas and back and forth. And then I asked other people to share their views on it, and then we finalized the final design for the cover. So it's not just me, it's a lot of other
Do you
people
have
that
it
has really
there?
helped.
Do
And
you have it in your office? Do you have your
um,
book? Hold it up if you
I
do. Do you have your
don't
book?
have a copy of it close by,
That's all right. This
unfortunately.
was spur of the moment, guys.
Yeah,
He didn't know I was going to ask him this.
yeah. I don't have the copy of it, but like I said, it's something if you search for it, you would see trauma to PTSD root causes to healing branches. Even if you follow me on any one of my social media pages, it's on there as well. You would see information about the book and stuff like that as well.
And you also do individual consults through Zoom, do you not? Don't you do in pretty
I do,
much
yeah, I
contact?
do
Yeah,
virtual consultations as well, yeah.
great deal.
So at
He
the end
does
of the
naturopathic. You're a naturopathic doctor. So it's not only just post-traumatic stress. Dr. Radley can help you if you need some food sensitivities, you want to understand how to get off prescription pharmaceuticals to a more naturopathic herbs, essential oils path. Dr. Radley can do that for you. And I'm sure he can set you up with some mindset coaching to bring your awareness and perception of what your trauma has done to yourself and others around you, because it does affect everyone around you until you process your trauma.
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, I am available for that. At the end, I'm going to share some of my contact information.
Oh,
So if
good
you
deal.
need to contact me, there is that contact information at the end of my presentation. So
I
jumping back
love the
into,
breaking the chains. I
yeah,
just saw the man literally the rumination. It is like bondage, breaking the
yep.
chains to freedom.
Yep, and that is where we try to break the cycles of it. So another thing that we could use to break in the cycle is cognitive behavioral therapy. And
Hmm.
there are other types of therapy that you could use as well. I just put cognitive behavioral therapy as one of them because there have been studies associated with CBT and the ways that it helps. But there are different types of therapies that you could reach out to that you could utilize. Not just myself, there are other medical healthcare
Instinctual
providers.
trauma release,
Yep.
biofeedback. There's all kind of modalities that you could do. I do several. I do like four different modalities for people.
Yeah. So again, it goes back to finding the right person to work with, and finding the
Yes.
technique that works for you. And like I said, there's tons of different researchers out there on different aspects of behavioral therapy and stuff like that that have been showing more and more effectiveness through scientific research and stuff like that. So again, it is important to find what works for you, but
Mhm.
also put your effort into really trying to break the cycle. And part of that would come into understanding what is rumination and then understanding your process of rumination. And that basically means understanding that rumination is when we get stuck in overthinking a
Yes.
situation. We continue chewing the cud basically, and we
Yeah.
don't stop doing it, right? Um, and at what point is it healthy and what point is it unhealthy is where we need to understand. We've talked about two aspects of where it is healthy to do it in terms of the reflective aspect of rumination and the deliberate aspect of rumination, where we are putting ourselves into thinking and going in and diving deeper into the situation and then using that to come out with something positive. So we know, yes, rumination is overthinking and going in and repeatedly thinking about the same thing over and over. But when we do it with that deliberate and reflective aspect of it, we're doing it with a purpose. And that's where your process of rumination would come in. Are we doing it with that deliberate process? Are we doing it with the intention of identifying certain things around? Are we identifying our triggers? Are we identifying what things are going wrong? And then are we also creating the problem solving aspect of it? So again, a big part of breaking the cycle is how much effort we're putting into it. That self-development, self-esteem, self-empowerment, but also just understanding our process of rumination, understanding why we're ruminating on something, how we're ruminating, what we're ruminating about, and taking that time to just put it together and create the problem solving aspect of it.
Hey, Dr. Radley, at what point do you think, well, I kind of need some help with this? Is it 3 months rumination? Is it 6 weeks? Is it 6 months? You're like, girl, it's been a year and I can't get this guy out of my head.
I think
What
a year
point?
is way too long.
I do too.
But
I think even 3 months is too
I
long.
don't think I would say put a time on it. You have to understand, and this is where the self-awareness aspect of things would come in. If we realize that we're getting stuck in ruminating and it's affecting our quality of life, then that is when you should take the steps to go. Because sometimes there might be people that ruminate about things over a year, but they're still able to function. And it is, yes, it is
Mhm.
creating a negative impact in our lives by
Keeping
ruminating
you
for something
stuck.
for that
It's
long.
keeping you stuck.
But if it's, and this is why I'm saying don't put a timeline on it in terms of saying if it goes only for this amount of time, then to do it. Because there might be some people that are ruminating on something just for 2 or 3 days, but it's
Mhm.
getting to the point where it's affecting daily function in our life. It's creating
Sleep,
depression, it's creating issues with sleep, it's creating
anxiety.
other issues with mental health, anxiety, PTSD,
Mhm.
it's creating different type of health issues. So you're starting to get sick more regularly because the immune system is being suppressed because of the stress response of it. We're
Digestion.
developing
My
issues
digestion,
with
man. Whoa,
digestion.
wow.
We're
Yeah.
developing issues with acid reflux. We're developing high blood
IBS.
pressure, IBS, different things like this. So what we want to do is we want to try to get to break that cycle before it gets to create damage, like physical damage to our physiological
Hmm.
responses of it. So that's why like I don't like the idea of putting a timeline on it because for
Yeah.
some people their rumination might be a quicker um, pathway to creating the physical responses and the negative physical responses. For some people, they may be able to ruminate over something for a longer period of time, but they still have some degree of control, right? And that's
Hmm.
where, again, understanding your process of rumination. And don't only look at it as a negative thing. It's like, okay, I identify that I'm ruminating on it. How do I switch from brooding to reflective, right? How do I switch it from intrusive to deliberate? And just finding
Very
your ways to
intrusive.
switch from the negative aspect of rumination to the positive aspect of
Yeah.
rumination. So once you feel like you don't have that control is when you need to reach out for help. And that's the best way to put it. Like I say, for the
When you feel
timeline
out of
on it,
control.
it's difficult to say because different people are coming from different situations. And we have to think of it that we might be ruminating on one incident, but what else is going on around it?
Hmm.
How have we been diagnosed with PTSD before? Have we been diagnosed with depression before? If we have, then when we get into these negative sides of the rumination, it is likely to increase the effects of those things. So you want to reach out for help earlier than later. You shouldn't say, oh, because I have dealt with depression before and PTSD and I've healed from it, and then now I'm going through rumination. I should say, oh, give it 3 months or 6 months. It might be a case where it only takes 2 days for you to go back down that rabbit hole and get
Mm-hmm.
stuck down there. So don't look at it as a timeline. Look at it through self-awareness. Where am I? Am I able to function? Am I able to, even though if I'm ruminating, am I able to break the cycle of rumination and get out of it and be able
Right.
to switch and function effectively and efficiently in my
Mm-hmm.
life? And that's where you need to make the step. And again, the control aspect of it. Even if you're able to function, if you feel like you're losing control, then that's the best time to reach out for help. Don't wait
Mm-hmm.
until
Mm-hmm.
you lose complete control. As long as you're feeling like you're starting to lose that control, reach out for the help so that it could break the cycle and it could help you get back
Mm-hmm.
to your regular path, like a more structured routine, and for you to really
Mm-hmm.
function optimally, effectively, efficiently, as the case may be.
It truly is just awareness and breaking that cycle and having the perception like, okay, this is a journey. I'm not crazy. I'm not broken. I was traumatized and it's going to take me time to heal. And if I can't find the community to support me, keep walking because I promise you, you will.
Yep,
I
exactly.
promise. The
Exactly.
right people, not the ones that want to charge you 6 and 12,000 and block you when they can't control you. That's not a good therapist, friend, or healer. It's just
Yeah.
not. Someone that wants to control someone and their healing in their perception or growth or whatever. If there's a control from your therapist, you're with the wrong therapist. You're supposed to
Out,
create a
out,
safe
like I said,
space.
there's a lot of people out there that have the skills, and it's not just me. I know other people because I have gotten help from other people. And
Mm-hmm.
it is important to understand that dynamics of it, that we shouldn't just say stop at one, stop at two, stop at three. Just keep going, keep going. And you would find the right people for you. Once you find them
Yeah,
for you, then you utilize them for you. And sometimes even the same set of people that you've worked with in the past, there might be
mm-hmm.
something else that comes up in the future that they might actually be more helpful for. So again, don't necessarily cast away some people unless you really feel like there's zero
They're less
potential
a
for them. Because sometimes
narcissist.
there are people like that you would meet and you'd be like,
Yeah,
I know there's no way that they could help me in the future. And then it genuinely becomes the case. But like I said,
yeah,
I don't like the idea of saying no that they never would, because you never know. Their style might be the one style that you really need to help you break
yeah,
through, but you may not need to get to 20 sessions with them or 10 sessions with them.
yeah,
You might just need that 1 or 2 sessions just to get you that breakthrough, just to get that push that you need. Because again, there are different approaches. There's the sledgehammer
yes.
approach, there's the chisel and the hammer approach. There is different ways to different things. So finding what works for you in each situation is what is the
Yeah.
most important aspect of it.
Just make sure your therapist. I even told this person, look, I have post-much stress. I'm very traumatized. I'm being trafficked by family members I don't trust easy at all. Please just don't hurt me and communicate with me. And I'll be
Mhm.
damned if she didn't block and not communicate and completely just Radley, it made me feel like I wasn't even human. Like she didn't even care enough about my pain. I'm a colleague, for God's sakes.
Mhm.
And I was a friend. And she didn't get her money fast enough and she just block left. I don't want to work with people like that cut out on me. I'm kind of the old Marine that no man's going to be left behind. I don't leave men behind.
Yeah.
If I work with you, I'm in the trenches with you. When it gets hard, I'm there with you. And it's not about money. This person all wanted money. It was all money.
Yeah.
Predator, narcissist, predator, multi-million-dollar business. Not for me, boo. I want a healer.
Yeah.
I don't want a therapist that wants to be a multimillionaire and be on covers of magazines and doing retreats. Not me, boo.
Yeah.
Not me.
And that's why it's important.
Not
Find
me.
what works for you and who works best for you. And that's the important part of it.
I'm a connection. If I don't feel that connection with someone, I'm big on connection.
Yeah.
And I don't work with just anybody. I'm Bradley would tell you that I don't work with just anybody. I've had people that are huge in the media world, big money makers, could have stepped on the stage and make money. I didn't trust them.
Yeah.
They sold out. And I don't work with people that sell out because you can't trust them. Trust is
Yeah.
huge with me.
Yeah.
Connection is huge with me.
And those are important
Trust,
factors in it. Trust,
trust,
connection, and trust is a big part. If you can't trust
trust.
the person that you're working with, how could you really open up and genuinely open up with them to
A
get the
safe
healing that you
place.
need? Yep.
Yeah. And speaking of safe places, it's June, Mental Health Awareness Month. What are you doing, Radley, for June for men's health?
So part of um, Mental Health Awareness Month for men, today we're talking about the topic of rumination. But it is important as men to understand that part of our mental health comes from the whole health aspect of it. Every aspect of our health contribute to each other. And I like talking about aspects of health and holistic approach to health from 6 different dynamics: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, environmental, and social. And they
Ooh, that would
all
make a
connect
good book. The
they all
dynamics of
connect
health.
to each other. So once we feed into one, we could impact the effects of another. Um, but since we're talking today specifically on the topic of rumination, I thought that we should just highlight some quick points on rumination and men's health. So a lot of studies have shown that women are twice as likely to ruminate than men. But that doesn't, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, we shouldn't just say minimize the effects of it because we're
Mhm.
comparing one thing to another, right? Yes, more women are more likely to ruminate than men, but there are also men that are affected by rumination. And it is important to understand the impact of it, understand the process of rumination and stuff like that. And a lot of times we have to also understand that societal pressure to suppress emotion in men is what
Yeah.
could lead to the rumination. Because now you don't have an avenue to express your emotion, you don't have an avenue to express your feelings. And then what that does, it forces you to internalize things. And sometimes you get into times and places where you can't no longer suppress it. You can't
Mhm.
keep ignoring it or find ways to distract. And it pops up at times where it's like you sit down and you dwell on what's going on over and over. And that's where rumination and men's health happens. It's you getting stuck in that place of
Yep.
repetitive cycle over and over and over and over. And it becomes creating a long-term impact on your mental health, emotional health, physical health as well. It even affects things like your social health and environmental health. You're unable to relate with
Absolutely.
people as well as you used to before. So making sure that we understand that rumination can affect men is important. So it's important for us to take, as men, to take the time to understand the impact on their mental health, on themselves and on their family. And it is important to break the cycle as early as we can to create that long-term impact. So to men that are struggling, it is important to reach out for help, whatever
Mhm.
help you need to reach out for. It is important. Sometimes reaching out for help is family, friends, medical healthcare providers. Reach out to
Preacher.
where you need to, but the important thing, especially for this month of June, where we're talking a lot about men's health and men's mental health, we shouldn't just make it a topic for a month. It should be something that we should live and really try to promote throughout the year. And like I said, to my message to men is when we struggle, we could struggle together, but we could also get through this together. So it is important for us to take opportunities to connect with ourselves and find ways that works for you to really overcome whatever struggles that you are. Validate your struggles, but work on it as well. And don't just give up just because you don't feel like you deserve help. Everybody deserves help, and we are all part of those everybody that deserve help. So that is my little message for men on Mental Health Awareness Month. So, thank you.
I love it. And the fact that I keep thinking I went like this because of the spring analogy. Men, we were taught in Mississippi growing up, shake it off, be a man, you can cry and makes you weak. I was taught, I'm not a crier. If I cry, I'm very, very, very upset or mad. I don't cry because I was taught, nope, you don't cry. As men, you need a safe place. You're the head of the household. If you don't understand how to deal with your emotions and your mental health, and you don't have anybody to go to, I promise you there are people like Dr. Radley that can help you. Reach out. Mental health is so key. Our men are the anchors of our society. I hate it when women's like, I don't need a man. Yes, we do. We need strong, confident men. We do. We need mentors. We need leaders.
So I want to say thank you, Suzanne, for creating this space for us to have this discussion today on this topic of rumination. I like ending on quotes. I like ending on different pictures. So I saw this picture when I was making the slide presentation. So I thought it was the ideal thing to sort of just throw in there as I say thank you and end the presentation for the cows have 4 stomach compartments to extract as many nutrients as possible as what gives them the opportunity to ruminate, right? I have 4 brain compartments to extract as much worries as possible. Bad dreams, unfinished works, am I living up to my potential, existential angst? So take time to understand what rumination is, take time to understand it is a process, it is something that we need to work on. And there is the positive and the negative sides to it. Try to focus more on the positive sides of rumination, really delve into that deliberate and reflective sides of rumination when it pops up for us. Take the opportunity to find something positive out of it. Find the cause, find the root cause, find the triggers, and find solutions for all of the triggers and the causes. And that's how we would heal, right? So again, my contact information, Facebook and Instagram, my handles are Universal Tree Health Clinic. My email is universaltreehc@gmail.com. And you could follow me and subscribe on YouTube at Dr. Radley Ramdhan. So again, Suzanne, thank you very much for creating this space and time for this presentation. Thank you.
Hey, Dr. Radley, I enjoyed chewing the cud with you, brother.
Thank you.
For those that need to chew the cud, so to speak, and process some of these ruminations, as he said, what is it again? Universal, I can't read because I don't have my
Universal
glasses
Tree
on.
Health Clinic.
Universal Tree Health Clinic. Y'all can also follow him on Instagram. I do believe you're on LinkedIn. And tell us how to get your book one more time.
So for my book, you could visit the website www.trauma2ptsd.com. There would be a link in the, I don't have any hard copies at this time, but there is a link on that website that could take you to Amazon's website where you have access to it as an ebook. You could also go through on Amazon and just search for trauma to PTSD root causes to healing branches, and you should be able to get to the ebook version of it as well. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you again, Dr. Radley. Always a pleasure having you here. Guys, remember, you can heal those healing branches. You can heal one bite, one prayer, one thought at a time. Tune in to Eden's Living TV, channel 16, WYBU. Thank you, Dr. Radley. You have a blessed day, and thank you for teaching me how to get off that rumination wheel.